The British government has announced plans to end all prosecutions related to the Troubles in Northern Ireland before 1998. It effectively acts as an amnesty for both former British soldiers and paramilitaries who will not face criminal charges for any acts carried out before that time. Boris Johnson told MPs in Parliament today that the move will allow Northern Ireland to draw a line under the Troubles. But that sentiment has not been shared by any of the 5 main political parties in Northern Ireland or by the Irish government. Victims' groups have been highly critical of it. Northern Ireland Secretary Brandon Lewis said the decision was not taken lightly.
A statute of limitations to apply equally to all Troubles-related incidents. We know that the prospect of the end of criminal prosecutions will be difficult for some to accept, and this is not a position that we take lightly. But we have come to the view that this is the best and only way to facilitate an effective information retrieval and provision process, and the best way to help Northern Ireland move further along the road to reconciliation. It is in reality a painful recognition of the very reality of where we are.
Well, let's go to Dublin now, where we can speak to our reporter Ken Murray for more on this story. Ken, good to see you there. There's not been a welcome reaction to this on both sides of the border. Tell us what governments there have been saying.
Well, I can tell you, Tugs, that there's anger and fury in the Irish government tonight. The Taoiseach, or Prime Minister Micheál Martin, said today that effectively this was an act of betrayal by the British, because the British government entered into an agreement back in 2014 at what was known as the Stormont House Agreement, whereby the British gave a committal that they would actually deal with legacy issues. These were situations where ordinary members of the public were either shot dead by Irish terrorists or by British loyalists, or indeed members of the British security forces. And there was a feeling that the British government would actually give people justice and give them the compensation and the peace of mind. So there's anger not only over the fact that the British government has gone back on its word, but the fact that victims of IRA terrorism and UVF, who are British loyalists, they won't get justice either. And as one group put it tonight, an organisation called Justice for the Forgotten, they say that this is a retrospective form of licence to kill. In other words, members of the British security forces engaged in murder, and now they're going to get off scot-free.
Ken Murray there with reaction from both sides of the border. Thank you. Well, let's talk now to Julie Hambleton. She's of a Victims' Relatives campaigner. Her sister was killed in the 1974 Birmingham pub bombings that claimed 20 other lives, and she joins me now. Well, thanks for taking time to speak to us here on the programme. How did you hear when you heard the government make clear its plans? Did they have any dialogue with your group at all?
It's not a laughing matter, but I laugh because of the contempt that we are treated with by the British government, not just this British government, but successive predecessor governments of all political parties. We have never, ever been acknowledged, neither have the mass murder of our loved ones. This piece of mendacious legislation that governments are trying to implement is just a means to an end for the British state to cover up their own dirty, toxic past. The main core of this legislation has nothing to do with the offering immunity to soldiers. They're just scapegoats in this whole process. This legislation will protect the dirty, toxic, collusional past of successive governments over the decades during the Troubles to stop the true scale of their collusion.
Now, it's also 30 years since the original men, the Birmingham Six, were released from jail. They were, of course, convicted for this and later found to be innocent. You know, what is the price of justice then for you?
Well, according to the British government, from today's statement, there is no price. And that is what sickens us. I wrote a letter to the Prime Minister yesterday to highlight how abhorrent this whole debacle is. How can it possibly be a deterrent for our community, for our society? What westernized society would even consider this to be a good idea. My opening line to the Prime Minister in my letter was, at what point did your government lose sight of its moral, ethical and judicial backbone? It's just unforgivable. And what it is actually allowing is for mass murderers to have a license to kill. And also, it will give free rein to any potential terrorists in the future who want to come to any of our cities in Great Britain and United Kingdom and kill with impunity without any fear of retribution, because the British government are going to legislate that any terrorist who commits an atrocity, whether it be murder or attempted murder, will be able to walk away scot-free. Where else in the world would that be acceptable?